Hi, my name is Jessie and welcome to my yarn studio. So this is episode number 3 of my knitting podcast where I share all of the knitting and sometimes crochet projects that I've been working on lately. So let's start with finished objects. I only have one, but it's a big one, and it's a sweater. So if you watched the last episode, you might remember that I was working on a sweater in this yarn, which, by the way, is the Barocco Ultra Alpaca in the DK weight. It's 50% Peruvian Highland wool, 50% alpaca. What's the color? Mahogany mix, I believe. So yeah, I was working on this last time. It has gone through quite a transformation since then. Last time I was trying to improvise a pattern, which I realized was a bad idea. And then, as you'll see later, I'm doing that again. So we'll see how that goes. But anyways, I was trying to improvise a pattern for a bottom-up V-neck sweater. I knew I wanted it to be V-neck, and as you can see, it ended up V-neck. But I just wasn't sure about where I wanted the V-neck to start and where I should start the armholes and widths for everything. So I ended up going down the pattern route. So I ended up getting the very V-neck raglan pattern by Jessie Mead. I'm not sure how you pronounce her name, but we do share the Jessie part, which is cool. But she's a great pattern designer that makes lots of cool things on Instagram and Ravelry and all that things. So it's pretty classic, simple V-neck pattern with raglan construction. You work it flat till you get to the V-neck, and then you join it in the round and do the sleeves like you would for normal raglan. But I made a decent amount of modifications. I mainly used it as a stitch count guide, and to get some reference for how deep the V-neck would end up and things like that. So first main modification that I made is that I sort of worked between multiple sizes. I've heard of other people who knit off patterns doing this, where they will, if they want a wider neckline, they'll start with a bigger size and then only knit to their correct sizes stitch count, or if they want a tighter neckline than the pattern calls for, they'll start with a couple sizes down and then just knit to the bigger sizes stitch count. So I kind of did that. In the finished object photos on Ravelry and Instagram, it seemed that the V-neck was really wide for a lot of people, or not wide, but large, and I wanted it to be relatively high, so I think I went down one size for the neckline, and then I knitted it out to the stitch count of my size. And then also for the neckline is that when it came to the V part, I increased a little bit more rapidly than it called for you to do so, which ended up changing the angle of the V-neck, because I don't think it's super flattering on me when V-necks are super narrow and super deep. I say that as I trace the exact shirt I'm wearing. I don't know, something about this doesn't do it, but if it's a super skinny V-neck, I personally don't like the way that looks on me. So by increasing more quickly, the two sides would meet more quickly, so the angle would be wider. So I did that, which worked. I like the way it looks. And then that also slightly altered where I ended up placing the armholes, but that wasn't a big deal. Another modification from the pattern is that it calls for, I believe, just a straight sleeve, which then with no decreasing down the arm, because most sleeves, as you knit them, if you want a fitted look or even what appears to be a straight look, you'll decrease at least a little bit. But if you don't decrease at all, the sleeve is completely straight, but because the arm is much thinner towards the wrist, it appears like a bell. So I didn't do that. I did decreasing. So it tapers, and then I went into a cuff that cinches it, unlike in the pattern, because I ended up going down more width. So I think it's like 0.5 millimeter difference between the cuff and the stockinette. I think I did a full millimeter. Because I knit the body on 4mm needles, and then I knit all of the ribbing on 3mm needles. And then, so yeah, so the sleeves look different, the cuffs looks different. For the ribbing, I'm kind of proud how this turns out. In the past, I've had issues with, when I first learned to knit, twisting my pearls. I would wrap the yarn the wrong way because I just learned off YouTube, and that's what felt most intuitive. And I realized I was doing that wrong, and I'm glad I corrected that for my stockinette, but it allowed me accidentally to experiment a little bit with twisting your ribbing, because a lot of people use twisted rib or twisted rib to make it look more neat, because sometimes it can look more wobbly because you have to bring the yarn back and forth for the knits and the pearls. So this is not anything I came up with, but I did half twisted rib for the cuffs. So for all of the knits, so all of the exposed bits, I twisted the stitches, which makes them look very tight and very neat. And it doesn't form together like a lot of ribbing does. So you can see the individual lines, which looks cool. But then for the inside, for all the purl stitches, I did untwisted stitches, which also looks pretty neat, partially I think because of the effect of the other side. But having the untwisted stitches, I think, gives it more elasticity, because if both sides are twisted, it can sit like flat and flare out a little bit more. But if only one is twisted and the other isn't, it kind of helps cinch it in, I think. So I'm really happy with the way it turned out, and the ribbing is like basically the only detail on a pretty plain sweater, and it's like I've got this whole thick collar, which is like the focal point of the sweater. So I'm glad it looks neat. That is important. So yeah, this was my first time doing any sort of v-neck, and it was really easy. Sometimes I have difficulty with picking up stitches, and I actually because I changed the needle size that I was using for the ribbing, I kind of had to improvise the stitch counts there. I think it tells you to pick up every 2 out of every 3 stitches or something like that, but I was using smaller needles, so I ended up picking up 1 out of every 2 because I was worried it was too wide. That was completely the wrong direction. It was super cinched, super bubbly, did not look good. Then I tried the 2 out of 3 that she recommended. That was still too cinched, so I ended up picking up every single stitch along the back, and then every single stitch or every single row, however it works out on a v-neck, down here. And I haven't blocked this or anything, and it lays super flat. I'm very happy with how it turned out. The only thing that I kind of screwed up on the v-neck, at least that I can tell that I screwed up, is right at the tip. So normally when you bind off, right, it has a slant, it has a bit of a direction, but it's usually not too bad. But I don't know if you can tell, but it definitely slants towards my right camera left here, and that is definitely my fault. I was worried that it would have too much width right at the V, so it would flare out. I don't know why I thought that. I tried it on before. It didn't look weird or anything. But yeah, so then I decided to decrease right along at the V, which I don't think is so bad of an idea, but for some reason I only decreased on one side of the center rib, and it was the side that the stitches lean anyways, so now my center rib leans kind of visibly. Yeah, I don't know, you tell me. Can you tell that it goes to the side? I don't think it's super obvious, but it's a little annoying. I probably should have fixed it. as I was binding off. Yeah, so for the bind off, I did the same one that I mentioned in the last video, Lori's twisty bind off, which is a lovely tutorial on YouTube. But it basically entails twisting your yarn forwards or backwards, not your yarn, twisting your needle forwards or backwards, depending on if you are doing a purl or if you're doing a knit. And it gives you a decent amount of stretch, and it works for all sorts of patterns for ribbing. So originally I used it on a previous sweater when I was doing 2x1 ribbing, so 2 knits, 1 purl, because I couldn't find any other good options for ribbing, to bind off ribbing of that pattern. And I thought for this one I might try a sewn bind off, like the Italian bind off, I think is what I would have gone with. But I was a little bit chicken, so I didn't end up doing that yet. I will get there eventually. But yeah, it worked great. So for the neckline, I ended up doing the neckline well before the rest of the ribbing, because I wanted to get it done so I could, because it can kind of cinch up the body. So I think, as she recommends in the pattern, it's important, or it can be helpful, to do the neckline before you finish the body, just to make sure you have the right length. So yeah, I did the neckline first, but I was in a position where I was away from all of my knitting supplies, and sometimes this bind off can have a little bit of flare, so I wanted to try to reduce the flare, although it's very minimal. It's actually a really lovely bind off, but also I wanted to reinforce the very edge of the neckline a little bit, just to make sure like it wouldn't stretch out or flop out with wear, because I do intend to wear this a lot. So I didn't have any extra needles that I could go down a needle size for, so I ended up using a tapestry needle. It's a slightly larger tapestry needle. At a guess, I'd say it's like 2mm, so down a millimeter from the needles I was using, but I honestly have no idea. It was quite uncomfortable, actually, because as you can imagine, the needle was very short. It kept like digging into my hand. It's not next to me, but so I can't just show you, but it was not the most pleasant experience. But it did result in a neckline that still has some give, but for the most part it is structured, and there's no like bubbling in the edge, which is really nice. And then in the other direction, for the body ribbing and for the sleeve cuffs, I ended up going up a 0.5 millimeter. So I used a 3.5mm for the bind off, which is good because it gives it more stretch, which is important, because these cuffs look relatively small, but I really like it when sweaters, I can push them all the way up past my elbow. It feels like restrictive if they are stuck on my forearm. So it's good. There's a lot of stretch there, a lot of stretch in the body, which is good. Very comfortable, very easy to wear for the most part. We'll get to that. What else is there to mention about this? Oh yeah, so because of how you form the neckline, the beginning of round ends up in the center, and I believe in the pattern she tells you how to correct that, which I did not do for some reason. I can't remember why. So it's fine and dandy. You can't really tell on the ribbing where it transitions, which is good. Although that transition is kind of blocky anyways, because that's where I had to start a new ball of yarn, so it's like extra thick there. So that's a little bit of a mess. But then there's like a little bit of a jog at the bind off right here. which could be avoided and is not noticeable at all during wear. But I would like to improve on little things like that if I can. So I'll keep that in mind for next time. Yeah, so on the wearability, I really love the shape. I think the fit is fantastic. I really like cropped lengths. I don't really wear stuff that isn't cropped for the most part. That's just my style. So yeah, and I love the color. I like the v-neck. It should be good for layering or wearing by itself. But unfortunately, I don't think I will be able to wear it much by itself because I have sensitive skin and it is a bit itchy. So on the one hand, it's very soft. I touch it with my hands. But the body of the fabric is very soft. But then I don't know if it's the wool or these little prickly, there's a halo, but then there's also longer threads that come out. So I don't know where it's coming from, but it's prickly. It's very soft, but then you'll just get stabbed every once in a while, which makes it harder for me to wear, especially because my skin right here is more sensitive. And anyways, so that is a little bit unfortunate. I guess a disadvantage of ordering online, because I did get this yarn online from the from yarn.com. It's a pretty big yarn supplier, and it's pretty close to me. I go to school in Boston and they are located in Western Massachusetts, so the shipping was pretty fast, which is nice. But yeah, so I didn't have a chance to feel it. It's a lovely yarn. I think if you're less sensitive, you might like it a lot. I just have to wear it over other clothing, which is fine. I do that a lot in the winter. It just won't be a good solo spring piece like I intended. But yeah, last weekend I was able to wear it over a mock neck shirt, and that is very much my style, and it was very warm and very comfortable. So I really like it for that. So as I mentioned, this started as a different version of the same project. It was always gonna, hopefully, if I could achieve it, look something like this. So I had to unravel it. So I had the same issue that I've had in the past that probably blocking will help with if I end up doing that, where the parts that I knit straight from a fresh skein are quite smooth. I don't know if you can tell, but like that part looks nice and smooth, very good. I don't know, I'm happy with the way it looks. But then the parts that I knit straight from the other piece have a lot more texture to them, unevenness in the stitches, because the yarn I was working with was previously knit, so it had stitch memory, so it was all kinked up. So I know you can fix that by unraveling it and then rescanning it up and steaming it or washing it to try to get the texture out. But I was lazy, and it was easy enough to just knit straight from the previous work, and it was only about, it was one skein's worth, so 100 grams worth, so it wasn't the majority of the sweater, so it ended up fine. So it's not that noticeable, and maybe if I block it, it will go away, so hopefully it will. I ended up using probably 425 grams, I'm not exactly sure. I bought 500 grams, 500 gram hanks, and I ended up dipping into all 5, and this is what I have left. And I if I had a scale, I would weigh it, but at a guess, there's 50 to 75 grams left. And I don't know what to make with it. I was thinking I could make some sort of scrap project. I have this light green yarn that might go well with this. It might be a little much color at once for me. I'm not really a hat person. I mean, maybe I could save it for accent work, but we will see. I'm not in a particular rush to finish it. Yeah, this is what I have left. For pricing, each hank was like, oh, how much was it? I think I ended up paying like $60 for all of the yarn. So each hank must have been like $12. And I think shipping was free, so that was nice. So yeah, that's it. It's not cheap, but it's definitely not super expensive. And I really love the color. Like I said, I love the shape, and I think hopefully I will be able to wear it for a long time, which will make the price worth it. Also, I kind of see, like, I can kind of justify spending more on knitting projects because not only am I getting a piece of clothing out of it that hopefully will turn out exactly how I want and be, you know, perfect to my dimensions and things like that, but I'm also like paying for my hobby. So, you know, this was, how long did this take me? After I restarted it, it probably took me like 2-ish weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. And I was only working on this. I wasn't working on any other project. But yeah, so that's paying for 2 weeks of a hobby and a clothing item. So if you think about it that way, it can make sense to spend a little bit more money. Obviously, spend however much you can or want to, but this worked out nicely for me. I don't think I would reorder though because of the prickliness, but maybe I would get a different type of yarn from them. So this is the only finished object that I have. All right, works in progress. I have the same first one as last time. I am knitting a Christmas stocking for a family member who would always knit other people Christmas stockings. But I learned to knit and I thought it would be nice to make her one. So I won't talk too much about it. That's the story. It's my first colorwork project. I think it's turning out well. I'm using the Lion brand Woolies yarn. I made my own pattern. It's my first time knitting a sock because a stocking is just like a large sock. I need to work on it more. I haven't worked on it at all, but I think it looks good and it will get done eventually. Very fast. All right, now for my second work in progress. It is a cardigan. So this is all I have. It's like, what do you think? 2 inches, 2.5 inches or 3 inches long. So I don't have much progress, but the backstory is that I recently got this cardigan and I really like it. I like the way it looks. I like the way it fits and I like the versatility of wearing it. So I wanted to make myself a cardigan. So that was kind of in the background of my mind, and I ended up at a Goodwill. And another thing that I have been meaning to do for a while is find a sweater that I like at the thrift store, maybe not in shape, but in color and texture and fiber content. And then you can actually, depending on how it's constructed, unravel it and reuse the yarn for something you would wear. People have mixed opinions on this. I think it's fine personally. And it has a lot of pros. You're reusing something, it's secondhand. You can often get really good quality fibers. Like it's relatively easy to find, like cashmere and other really nice expensive fibers at the thrift store. And it can be very affordable because, whereas I paid $60 for that yarn, I only paid, I don't even know how much, less than $10, like $7 for this sweater. And it's way more yarn than I bought. I think it's probably at least like 700 grams of yarn. So affordable and reuse, which I like. So I found the sweater and I decided I was gonna take it home and unravel it. And that ended up being, the yarn ended up being something I decided I would make into a cardigan. So I did a bunch of like test swatching for different stitches This is fisherman's rib. And then I tried out some garter stitch because I'm kind of lazy and don't like purling, but we'll see. And then I tried cabling for the first time. It looks okay. I tried other things. I think there's just like different needle sizes and some stockinette too. And then I was trying increasing on like fisherman's rib, but I don't think I will end up needing to do that based on how I plan to construct it. So yeah, I have a lot of yarn. It mostly looks like this, which looks pretty scary. I've got like 6 or 7 of these big hanks that I formed by winding them on the back of my desk chair. And then I tried to get the stitch memory, the like kinkiness out, but obviously it did not work. My setup was definitely janky. I just hung them on a clothing hanger. Like I had one like this, and then I interlocked it, and then I like hung it on here, and then I put another one to like try to weight it. So definitely not the best setup, but it did not work the greatest, as they are definitely still textured, but it should work better than when it was fresh, and it gave me a chance to wash the yarn, which is nice. So I need to put these into balls so I can work with them. And thankfully there is a knitting club at my school that I'm a part of, and I can use their equipment for winding it back up, so I don't have to deal with these monsters. So the way that this yarn works, I don't know if this is common for commercial production, but it's actually 4 separate strands for one yarn, 4 strands for one strand. And it's not like a 4 ply, like it's not like they're plied together, it's not like they're twisted. It's 4 separate strands just like held together. 1, 2, 3, 4. Which is interesting. Maybe that like allows them to modulate the weight of yarn better. Like if they just like they get all of their yarn in this very small weight, and then if they want something that's sport weight, they use 2, and if they want something that's DK, they use 3, and worsted is 4. Or however, I don't actually know what the weight is. I'd say it's maybe like a DK weight with 4 together, but I'm not exactly sure. Maybe it's a sport weight. I don't know. But yeah, it's like, I think it's 60% cotton and 40% acrylic. And I have also been wanting to work with a combo of cotton and acrylic because, well, first of all, this is half cotton, half acrylic, and I really like the way it feels. And I have other cotton sweaters, or mainly just one, that I really like. But working with cotton yarn, I have not enjoyed it in the past. It has very little stretch just because of how the fiber is naturally, which I find difficult to work with. So I thought that having some acrylic with it would give it some more elasticity. And you can also do that with wool, but the advantage of not using wool is that it's better for sensitive skin, like I have found out that I have. So yeah, cotton and acrylic, kind of strange 4-ply. It's still not the easiest to work with, A, because of the rigidity that the cotton gives, and B, because of the 4 separate plies that you have to manage. But it's working out okay so far. So on to my plan, actually. So basically, it's very simple. The plan is to work it flat. So work up to the armpit, then split for the front, and back. So I have those marked out. So this will be the back, and then this will be one side of the front, and then this will be the other side of the front. And then just continue them to the shoulder point and Kitchener them together. because I believe you can do Kitchener stitch on ribbing, but I need to do more research on that. And then I will pick up stitches for the sleeves and sew them on. Or I might knit the sleeves separately and then sew them on, because I don't know how to do... Oh, okay. Rewind a little bit. So the bottom bit is just normal 1x1 ribbing, and then this is fisherman's rib. And so for the sleeves, I might knit them flat because I don't know how to do fisherman's rib in the round, which is how I would normally do a sleeve. Maybe you can do that. I will also look that up before I attempt anything sleeve related. So yeah, pretty basic plan. Planning it myself. I think it'll work this time. I've said that before. We'll see. At the very least, knitting things and unraveling them gives me experience, and it's not time wasted because I have enjoyed it. But yeah, I think it looks really good so far. I really like the the fisherman's rib, because it's got a lot of texture, and as people like to say, it's very squishy. It's very soft, and it should be very comfortable to wear because because of how squishy it is. It's very forgiving. So yeah, this is taking forever. Oh my god. Fisherman's rib takes so long because the way it's worked is you knit into the stitch below and then you purl normally and then you go back. So it like takes you 2 passes to get 1 row height. So it takes like twice as long. So this has taken me forever. By forever, I mean like less than a week, but it feels like forever because I've spent a decent amount of time on it. I am using 3mm needles because, for both kinds of ribbing, because I liked the size that it gave, and I read online that for fisherman's rib you're supposed to use a smaller needle rather than a larger one, because as you can tell, compared to the normal ribbing, the texture is much larger. And because of how squishy it is, you can afford to use a smaller one because it won't get super dense and rigid, even if it is in cotton. Yeah, so I like the way it's turning out with the 3mm. I'm doing some stockinette, not stockinette. Oh my god. I'm doing 1 line of garter on the edge to stop it rolling, and then I will pick up for the band right here once I have sewn it together at the shoulders. So this is what it's looking like. I measured this piece and I made a very tentative plan that I can show you. Just a very simple drawing with some of the measurements. And I'll have like 4 buttons, and I'll get to learn how to make knitted buttonholes for the first time, which will be cool. This is a project of learning in many ways. But yeah, at the moment I don't have a white sweater, a white knitted sweater. So I think it'll be a very versatile piece in my wardrobe, and I will enjoy knitting it. I am kind of terrified the whole time while I'm knitting it though, and I need to just put in lifelines to alleviate some of this. But fisherman's rib is very hard to fix, at least compared to stockinette when you drop a stitch or anything like that, because it's like 2 stitches at once. So that's making things difficult. And then also, because it's 4 separate plies, I have to keep track of all of those. So it's very scary. I need to put in lifelines, which I normally don't have to do, just to like alleviate some of the stress of working on it. Because like one time like a couple rows back, there was this one stitch where I hadn't captured 1 out of the 4 strands, and I tried to like go back and pick it back up, and I think I messed it up. Thankfully, you can't really tell. I don't even know where it was, which is a good sign, which means it's not that noticeable. But yeah, I don't think I did it properly, and I think it looked a little weird. Aha, I think I found it. I think it's like right here. I don't know if you can tell, it's like a slightly more open stitch. Yeah, it's just scary. It's a little bit difficult, but only if I mess it up. So just don't mess it up and things will be okay. At least that's one strategy. That's one way of thinking about it. So yeah, I've got this guy that I'm currently working from, and then I've got a whole lot more yarn, which is good because fisherman's rib can take up more yarn than you are used to. So glad I have lots to spare. What's next? That's it, I think, for relevant works in progress. Yeah. All right. For acquisitions, other than the yarn acquisition that I already talked about that I'm working on, I have some tools acquisitions. So I've been working with this one set of fixed circular needles that I got. It's from sizes 2mm to 10mm, 18 sizes between that. And it works pretty well, but it's a pretty long cord. It's 30 something inches from tip to tip. So I got from the same company some shorties. So these are 16 inches from tip to tip, and instead of being 5 something inches in length for the actual needle, they're 3 something inches. So these have greatly expanded my collection for the good, because now sleeves and things like that are much easier, because while I can do magic loop, the cord isn't the best for it. It's kind of blocky and difficult to maneuver, and it just takes me less time if I don't have to do all of the rearranging for magic loop. And I don't find them uncomfortable to work with. I mean, it's a little bit harder because of the shorter needles, but not debilitatingly so. So I got a set of these, which have been very helpful. And then, so something I've been looking for a while, or I've been thinking about buying it for a while, is a stitch saving cord. So it's a little rubber tube that is hollow, and you just sort of wiggle it onto the edge of your needle on both ends, and then you can slide your stitches on without having to manually transfer them with the tapestry needle, and it goes a lot faster. And you can buy lengths of that kind of cord off Etsy from like knitting shops. I haven't been able to find it anywhere else before now, but it was pretty expensive. So I actually came across in a Reddit thread someone mentioning this particular kind of cord that people use for jewelry making, like for bracelets. It's just like a hollow rubber cord. I forget exactly what else you can find it by. So I ended up getting some of that. So instead of having 30 inches, I have a whole big thing of it. It's many, many, many feet, probably more than I will ever need. This is by the brand Pandahal, which makes a lot of craft supplies, and it's the 2mm size. So apparently the external diameter is 2mm and the internal diameter is 1mm. And yeah, it works cool. It works cool. It works well, except that it is a little bit small. So for smaller needles, like let's see what this one, this is 2.25. So for smaller needles, it works pretty well because there is enough tension to keep it on, and you can pull on it a decent amount and it won't come off. But for larger needles, I think it's actually too small. Like for my stocking, for example, I am using 4.5 millimeter, yeah. So as you can imagine, it doesn't quite work well. Like you can kind of slide it on because the cord has a decent amount of elasticity. So it'll go part way up the tip, but it'll just come off. So I think for it to work for all my projects, I would need to get a larger size. And they do have larger sizes. It goes up to 4 millimeter external diameter. I say diameter as I motion like a circumference. A 4 millimeter external diameter and a 2 millimeter internal diameter. So that should give me a lot more flexibility if I choose to get that as well. But for now, I think I will stick to using this because I am knitting on smaller needles for my main project at the moment. So this should work if I need it. So I'm excited to be able to use this because I really like trying things on a lot throughout the process, especially when I'm insistent, if not trying to create the whole pattern myself, to making modifications, like I did for the V-neck. So it's good to be able to try things on, and this makes it a lot faster. So this is a very good purchase. All right, and then for my last acquisition, I got, sorry, it's crinkly. Let me get it out of the plastic. All right, I have it out of the plastic. It's a little bit of a mess. But for my last purchase, I got a set of metal knitting accessories. So in the set, you have some, like, oh, what are they called? Like safety pin style stitch savers. So there's this little itty bitty baby one, and then it goes all the way up to this much larger one. I think this is the largest size, yeah. So these will be helpful. And then it also comes with like U-shaped utensils, needles, like these. And I'm not exactly sure what you use these for. I need to look that up. I think you probably could use them for cables, but they are not the cabling needles because it came with proper cabling needles like these. Because for cables, you put some stitches on hold and then you knit the ones after it, and then you knit the ones that should be before it, and that's what gives it the like crossed over effect. So that's what these are for. So I got these, which is really cool, which allowed me to try out some cabling for the first time. There's a bunch of pieces. There's like different sizes. There's like different shapes of cabling needles as well. I don't know what the flat bottom, like with the notch, does versus the like V-shaped bottom, but it should work the same for my purposes. So I have some of these guys, like slowly building up my collection of knitting utensils. Hopefully not excessively. I really don't have that much space in my room. But these will be helpful, and they don't take up much space. So I think it will be nice to have them. All right, that is it for acquisitions. And then in terms of my knitting plans for the near future, I live in the Northern Hemisphere, so it is becoming spring and summer, which is really nice, very exciting, but I will have less cause to wear knitted items, which means I will probably have less motivation to create knitted items. I will probably continue, I will continue working on the projects that I have, and I will definitely finish those, but I will probably transition to sewing more. So maybe I will share that too, but there will probably be fewer knitting projects because there are a whole bunch of knitting patterns you can do for the summer, like various tank tops and tees, but those aren't really my style. My Favorite Things Knitwear has a couple of camisoles that are quite elegant, but I don't know. I don't have any plans to make them, Although, side note, my favorite things knitwear did just release her sweater number 20 pattern, which is full of cables and it's got this big fold over v-neck and it looks fantastic. So maybe I will make an exception and I will make that this summer. But I think the knitting might wind down a little bit for now, which is fine. I will pick it back up definitely towards the fall if I do take a break. All right, that is it for now. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. I like talking about knitting, as is probably very clear. If you did enjoy it, I have 2 previous episodes if you'd like to look at those, but no pressure. Thank you for spending time with me, and I hope you have a great day.